Last week, I had a dinner at a famous 5-star hotel. It featured 14 courses with 2 appetizers, 2 types of salads, 1 soup, 3 meat entree, 2 seafoods, 2 kinds of dessert, 1 fruit platter, and 1 drink. That was a lot of food inside my belly that day. I told my family I would never eat that much food again. I couldn't even bend down to tie my shoelace. So for me, 14 courses is already too much. What about 108 courses with over 300 dishes? It might sound unbelievable, but this grand event did exist. It was called Man and was hosted 300 years ago in the Qing Dynasty of China. Man means the Manchu people, and Han means the ethnic Han Chinese people, and Quanji means the entire feast. Today in Binge History, we are traveling to China and take a look into this biggest feast ever in the Chinese history. The Man Imperial Feast included the best of both Manchu and Han dishes and is by far the most luxurious and grandest feast in the Chinese history. But before we talk about the Man Imperial Feast, it is good to have some understanding of the historical context behind it. The feast originated during the Qing Dynasty when the Manchu people conquered the Ming Dynasty of China established by the Han people. For thousands of years, the ethnic Han Chinese people in the mainland China had numerous conflicts with the northern nomadic tribes, for example, the Huns in the Han Dynasty and the Manchu in the Ming Dynasty. The primary reason of these conflicts has been economic. Historically, the nomadic tribes moved from one place to another for pasture and rarely settled in one place. Their livelihood primarily relied on hunting, gathering, and domestication of livestock. Because nomads live by water and grass, relying on the weather for food, once there was a natural disaster, there was no other way to survive except to come out and take from other people. Traditionally, the ruling class of nomads had 3 ways to deal with natural disasters: either by winning the war to obtain food and supplies to keep the tribe alive, by losing the war and dying a large number of people so the rest could have enough food, or staying in place and waiting for other tribes to help them out. Compared to the nomads, the agricultural production pattern in the south was much more stable. The weather in the south was also much better and the soil more fertile. As a result, it allowed the farmers to develop a regular agricultural production cycle with spring plowing, summer hard working, autumn harvesting, and winter storage. This cycle continues year after year with just few exceptions. Therefore, the ethnic Han Chinese's livelihood was much more secured than their northern counterpart. But it also made the nomads jealous. That's why over centuries, the nomads liked to invade mainland China for stable livelihood. And that's why the Great Wall of China was built in the first place, to keep out invasions from various northern nomadic tribes. So in 1616, the leader of the Manchuria Nurhaci united all tribes, including the neighboring Mongolian tribes, and invaded the Ming Dynasty in the south. After years of wars, in 1644, the Manchu people, led by Nurhaci's grandson, who later became the Emperor Shunji, successfully defeated the Ming Dynasty and established the Qing Dynasty. In the process of fighting against remaining resistance forces, the rulers of the Qing Dynasty imposed many unfavorable policies. For example, Han men were required to cut their hair and wear queues in Manchurian fashion, and wear Manchurian clothing, or they would face execution. Historically, the Han people had been looking down on northern nomads as if they were less developed. The Han Chinese even considered Manchurians as barbarians, so it was a shame and unacceptable for them to be ruled by the nomads at the time. Years of wars had also led to population decline and social development hindered. In view of this, Emperor Kangxi, who was considered by historians to be one of the greatest emperors in the Chinese history, gradually abolished these maladministrations. Since he was a big fan of ethnic Han's Chinese culture, he greatly promoted the fusion between Manchurian and Chinese cultures. The period under Emperor Kangxi was characterized by geographical expansion and economic prosperity. So now you understand the historical context, let's talk about the Man Imperial Feast. Emperor Kangxi knew eating was big in the Chinese Han's culture, so in order to reduce conflicts and promote cultural understanding, at least that's what the Qing's officials say, Emperor Kangxi decided to host this massive banquet on his 66th birthday. It consisted of 6 banquets over 3 days. The banquets featured 196 items of cold meat and hot dishes. 124 items of dim sum and tea food and desserts, and 320 items of delicacies. And all this food was consumed in 3 days. The dishes were formally categorized into 108 formal courses. 54 courses were northern style and 54 courses from the south. The chefs were the best at the time, invited by the emperor. Since there were 108 courses with over 300 dishes, I will just introduce some of the most famous dishes, which is the 32 delicacies. They were made from the most uncommon, most prized, and exotic ingredients that could be found at the time. According to the book Notes of Yangzhou Pleasure Boat by Li Du, these 32 delicacies can be categorized into 4 parts: the mountain, the sky, the sea, and the land. The 8 mountain treasures included steamed camel humps, braised bear paw with carp tongues, monkey brain, gorilla lips with rice dregs, imitated leopard fetuses, rhino tails, and deer tendons. And then the 8 birds treasures: red swallow, hazel grouse, quail, swan, partridge, colored finch, turtle dove, red-headed eagle. There were also the 8 sea treasures: cubulos, which is bird saliva, shark fin, which many environmentalists oppose these days, big black cucumber, fish maw, fish bone, abalone, seal, and pike. And last but not least, the 8 land treasures: Hericium, tremella, bamboo fungus, donkey nest fungus, morel, mushrooms, daylily, yunjiangjing, a really rare and expensive mushroom. The utensil was also elaborate. The majority of utensils were finely crafted bronzeware, and the larger pieces of porcelainware were shaped into many animals, such as fish, pig, and duck, for keeping the dishes warm throughout the meal. They also used an equipment very similar to hot pot. The inner layer was for food, and the outer layer was filled with boiling water, which was convenient for heat preservation. Well, of course, not everyone was eligible and invited to join this grand event. Although the feast served over 2,500 guests, you had to be either the member of the imperial family or government officials of the country. The feast was divided into the inner palace feast and the outer palace feast. Only the emperor, the imperial family, and the officials of the highest rank could enjoy the feast in the inner palace. The outer palace feast was for the officials of lower ranks, usually the Han officials, particularly due to tougher upward mobility in the Qing dynasty for them. When the feast started, traditional music would be played to welcome and accompany the guests. The guests would wash their faces and hands upon arrival, followed by a cup of fragrant tea and tea snacks, such as carefully prepared nuts, and they would just chat with each other. Next, the dishes started to be served. The Manchu dishes were served first, followed by the Han dishes, during which the table must be changed, which was called turning over the table. During the whole process, the table was changed 4 times. The Manchu and Han dishes were alternated to serve guests. After they finish all the food, they would wash and clean their face and hands again before leaving. Man-Han Imperial Feast was not only the extravagant feast in the Qing dynasty. Just for extra information, the other most famous banquets include: Number 1. Mongolian banquet for entertaining Mongolian royal relatives married to the Qing imperial family. Number 2. Courtier banquet for rewarding government officials with great achievements. Number 3. Emperor's birthday, which is unsurprisingly important, as everyone knows. Number 4. Banquet of 1,000 Elders. This event for officials and retired officials over the age of 65 as a way to appreciate their contribution to the country. Number 5. 9 White Banquet. 9 whites included 1 white camel and 8 white horses. These white animals were paid as tribute to Emperor Kangji by Mongolian tribes to show their loyalty. Therefore, in return, Emperor Kangji thanked them by hosting this banquet. After the Qing dynasty was overthrown by the democratic activists led by famous Sun Yat-sen, Man-Han Imperial Feast were gradually lost due to economic and political upheaval, such as during the Communist Cultural Revolution in the 1960s and 70s. On November 1977, the Hong Kong State Guest Restaurant, now the Federal Restaurant, was commissioned by the Japanese TV station TBS to produce a full 108-course Manchu feast replica at a price of 100,000 Hong Kong dollars, which was over $12,500 US. The restaurant used more than 160 people, and it took 3 months to complete the preparations. This process was broadcast live to Japan by satellite. However, because some animals had become protected animals, some of them were really hard to find and some cooking techniques had been lost. It was almost impossible to make a Man-Han banquet similar to the one in the Qing Dynasty. Next time, if you are eating with your friends and they say a 10-course meal is too much, perhaps you can share what you have learned from this video and tell them the story of the Man-Han Imperial Feast. Leave a comment below sharing what you would eat and would not eat on the Man-Han Imperial Feast table. And if you like the video, please click that subscribe button. Thank you for watching Binge History. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you guys next time.